Chapter 5. David and Abigail. Samuel died, and the Israelites gathered and lamented for him, and buried him at his home in Ramah. David went down to the wilderness of Paran, the northeast region of Sinai Peninsula. 1 Samuel 25 verse 1. In the city of Maon was a man whose business was in Carmel, and the man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. His name was Nabal, and his wife is Abigail. She was a woman of good understanding and beautiful appearance, but Nabal was harsh and evil in his doings. He was a descendant of the house of Caleb. When David heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep, he sent 10 young men to go greet him in his name. They were to say to him who lives in prosperity, "Peace to you, peace to your house, and peace to all that you have. Now I have heard that you have shearers. Your shepherds were with us, and we did not hurt them, nor was there anything missing from them all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and to your son David." When David's young men came to Nabal, they spoke to him according to all these words in the name of David, and waited. Then Nabal answered David's servants, and said, "Who is David, and who is the son of Jesse?" Many servants nowadays break away from his master. Should I then take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers, and give it to men when I do not know where they are from? Therefore David's young men turned on their heels and went back, and they came and told him all these words. Then David said to his men, "Every man gird on his sword." Therefore every man girded on his sword, and David girded on his sword. Then about 400 men went with David, and 200 stayed with the supplies. One of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. However, the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything as long as we accompanied them, when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us both by night and day, all the time we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore, know and consider what you will do, for harm is determined against our master and against his entire household, for he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him." Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed, 1/5 bushel of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. Then she said to her servants, "Go on before me, see I am coming after you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. 1 Samuel 25 verses 2 to 19. Abigail rode on the donkey, and she went down under cover of the hill, and there were David and his men, coming down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, "Surely in vain I have protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belongs to him, and he has repaid me evil for good. May God do so, and more also, to the enemies of David, if I leave one male of all who belong to him by morning light." When Abigail saw David, she dismounted quickly from the donkey, fell on her face before David, and bowed down to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "On me, my lord, on me let this iniquity be. Please let your maidservant speak in your ears, and hear the words of your maidservant. Please, let not my lord regard this scoundrel Nabal. For as his name is, so is he, Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. However, I, your maidservant, did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent. Now therefore, my lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, since the Lord has held you back from coming to bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now then, let your enemies and those who see harm for my lord be as Nabal. Now this present which your maidservant has brought to my lord, let it be given to the young men who follow you. Please forgive the trespass of your maidservant. For the Lord will certainly make for you an enduring house, because my Lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil is not found in you throughout your days. Yet a man has risen to pursue you and seek your life, but the life of my Lord will be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God, and the lives of your enemies he will sling out, as from the pocket of a sling. Therefore, it will come to pass, when the Lord has done for you according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you, and has appointed you ruler over Israel, that this will be no grief to you, nor offense of heart to you either that you have shed blood without cause, or that you have avenged yourself. However, when you have dealt well with yourself, and then remember your maidservant. Then David said to Abigail, Blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me. And blessed is your advice and blessed are you, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed and from avenging myself with my own hand. For indeed, as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has kept me back from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, surely by morning light, no males would have been left to Nabal. Therefore, David received from her hand what she had brought him, and said to her, Go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your voice and respected your person. 1 Samuel 25 verses 20 to 35. Abigail left David and went to her husband Nabal, and there he was, holding a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. Therefore, she told him nothing, little or much, until morning light. Therefore, it was in the morning, when the wine had gone from Nabal, and his wife had told him the things, that his heart died within him and became like a stone. Then it happened, after about 10 days the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed is the Lord, who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and has kept his servant from evil. Or the Lord has returned the wickedness of Nabal on his own head. Then David sent and proposed to Abigail, to take her as his wife. When the servants of David had come to Abigail at Carmel, they spoke to her, saying, David sent us to you, to ask you to become his wife. 1 Samuel 25 verses 36 to 39. Abigail arose, bowed her face to the earth, and said, Here is your maidservant, a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. Therefore Abigail rose in haste and rode on a donkey, attended by 5 of her maidens, and she followed the messengers of David, and became his wife. David also to Ahinoam of Jezreel, and so both of them were his wives. While David was on the run, Saul gave Michal, David's first wife, to Palti, and son of Laish, who was from Gaulim. 1 Samuel 25 verses 40 to 44. David allies with the Philistines. David said in his heart, Now I will perish someday by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should speedily escape to the land of the Philistines, and Saul will despair of me, to seek me any more in any part of Israel. Therefore, I will escape out of his hand. Then David arose and went over with the 600 men who were with him to Achish the son of Mauch, king of Gath. So David dwelt with Achish at Gath, he and his men, each man with his household, and David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's widow. Then it was told Saul that David had fled to Gath, so he sought him no more. David said to Achish, If I have now found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country that I may dwell there, for why your servant should dwell in the royal city with you? Therefore Achish gave him Ziklag that day. David dwelt in the country of the Philistines 1 full year and 4 months. Ziklag was originally a city given as an inheritance to the tribe of Judah. Therefore, the city of Ziklag has belonged to the kings of Judah to this day. Joshua 15 verse 31, 1 Samuel 27 verses 1 to 7. The men who came to David at Ziklag while he was still a fugitive from Saul were among the mighty men, helping in the war, armed with bows, using both the right hand and the left in hurling stones and shooting arrows with the bow. They were of the tribe Benjamin, Saul's brethren. The chief was Ahiezer, then Josh, Jeziel, Baracha, Jehu, Ishmaiah, a mighty man among the 30, and over the 30. There were Jeremiah, Jahaziel, Johanan, and Jozabad, Eluzai, Jeremoth, Bealiah, Shemariah, and Shephatiah. In addition, there were Elkanah, Jesiah, Azarel, Jozer, and Jashabim, the Korahites, and Joelah, and Zebadiah, the sons of Jeraham of Gedor. 1 Chronicles 12 verses 1-7. Some Vidites joined David at the stronghold in the wilderness, mighty men of valor, men trained for battle, who could handle shield and spear, whose faces were like the faces of lions, and were as swift as gazelles on the mountains. Ezra the first, Obadiah the second, Eliab the third, Mishmannah the fourth, Jeremiah the fifth, Battai the sixth, Eliel the seventh, Johanan the eighth, Elizabad the ninth, Jeremiah the 10th, and Machbani the 11th, these were from the sons of Gad, captains of the army. The least was over 100, and the greatest was over 1,000. These are the men who crossed the Jordan in the first month, when the river overflowed all its banks. They put to flight all those in the valleys, to the east and to the west. 1 Chronicles 27 verses 8-15. David and his men went up and raided the Jeshurites, the Girzites, and the Amalekites, for those nations were the inhabitants of the land from of old, going toward the land of Shur, as far as the land of Egypt. Whenever David attacked the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away the sheep, oxen, donkeys, camels, and returned to Achish. Then Achish would say, "Where have you made a raid today?" David would say, "Against the southern area of Judah, or against the southern area of the Jerahmeelites, or against the southern area of the Kenite." David would save neither man nor woman alive, to bring news to Gath, saying, lest they should inform on us, saying, "Thus David did." This was his behavior all the time he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. Therefore Achish believed David, saying, "He has made his people Israel utterly abhor him, therefore he will be my servant forever." 1 Samuel 27 verses 8-12. Philistines go to war against Israel. In those days, the Philistines gathered their armies together for war, to fight with Israel. Therefore Achish said to David, "You assuredly know that you will go out with me to battle, you and your men." Then David said to Achish, "Surely you know what your servant can do." Some men from Manasseh deserted to David when he was going with the Philistines to battle against Saul, but they did not help the Philistines, for the lords of the Philistines sent them away by agreement, saying, "He may defect to his master Saul, and endanger our heads." When David went to Ziklag, those of Manasseh who deserted to him were Adnah, Jozabad, Jediel, Michael, Elihu, and Zilithai, captains of the thousands who were from Manasseh. Therefore they helped David against the bands of raiders, for they were almighty men of valor, and they were captains in the army, for at that time they came to David day by day to help him, until it was a great army like the army of God. 1 Chronicles 12 verses 19-22. Achish, the king of Gath, said to David, "Therefore, I will make you one of my chief guardians forever." David had gone along with Achish, but he knew that the Lord would make a way to get him out of going up against his people, and David trusted in him. 1 Samuel 28 verses 1-2. Then the Philistines gathered all their armies at Aphek, and the Israelites encamped by a fountain which is in Jezreel. Then the lords of the Philistines passed in review by hundreds and by thousands, but David and his men passed in review at the rear with Achish. Then the princes of the Philistines said, "What are these Hebrews doing here?" And Achish said to the princes of the Philistines, "Is this not David, the servant of Saul king of Israel, who has been with me these days, or these years? And to this day I have found no fault in him since he deserted to me." But the princes of the Philistines were angry with Achish, and said to him, "Make this fellow return, that he may go back to the place which you have appointed for him, and do not let him go down with us to battle, unless in the battle he become our adversary. For with what could he reconcile himself to his master, if not with the heads of these men?" Is this not David, of whom they sang to one another in dances, saying, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? Then Achish called David and said to him, Surely, as the Lord lives, you have been upright, and your going out and your coming in with me in the army is good in my sight. For to this day I have not found evil in you since the day of your coming to me. Nevertheless, the Lords do not favor you. Therefore, return now, and go in peace, that you may not displease the lords of the Philistines. 1 Samuel 29 verses 1 to 7. David said to Achish, But what have I done? And to this day, what have you found in your servant as long as I have been with you, that I may not go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king? Then Achish answered and said to David, I know that you are as good in my sight as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the princes of the Philistines have said, He will not go up with us to the battle. Now therefore, rise early in the morning with your master's servants who have come with you, and as soon as you are up early in the morning and have light, depart. Therefore, David and his men rose early to depart that morning, to return to the land of the Philistines. Then the Philistines went up to Jezreel. 1 Samuel 29 verses 8 to 11. Saul consults a medium. The Philistines gathered, came, and encamped at Shunem. Therefore Saul gathered all Israel together, and they encamped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. Therefore, when Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him. Saul sought to be answered by him through dreams, the Urim, or by the prophets. When the Lord did not answer him, Saul then sought to inquire counsel from a medium, or spiritist, or a psychic to seek the dead for a revelation. During the life of Samuel, Saul had put the mediums and the spiritist out of the land. When Saul sought a medium, it became an abomination to the Lord, for he was following the abomination of the nations around him. One who practiced witchcraft, a soothsayer, one who interprets omens, a sorcerer, one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, one who calls up the dead are all abominations to the Lord, and this is one reason the Lord drove the nations out before Israel. Deuteronomy 18 verses 9 to 12. Saul decides to go against his own law concerning the medium to inquire knowledge from her, who's supposing to get this knowledge from the dead. He said to his servants, Find me a woman who is a medium, that I may go to her and inquire of her. His servants said to him, In fact, there is a woman who is a medium at Endor. Therefore Saul disguised himself and put on other clothes, and he and 2 men with him came to the woman by night. He said, Please conduct a séance for me, and bring up for me the one I will name to you. Then he said, Bring up Samuel for me. A séance is an attempt to communicate with the spirits. Usually, people gather to receive messages from the spirit world or to listen to mediums transmitting messages from spirits. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice, and the woman spoke to Saul, saying, Why did you deceive me? You are Saul. The king said to her, Do not be afraid. What did you see? The woman said to Saul, I saw a spirit ascending out of the earth. He said to her, What is his form? She said, An old man is coming up, and he is covered with a mantle. Then Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed down. 1 Samuel 28 verses 3 to 14. The séance brought up from the grave a genuine appearance of Samuel, whom the Lord himself brought up from the grave to appear before Saul. When the woman saw Samuel, she was frightened and immediately recognized Saul, who deceived her. She had just experienced a real supernatural incident from her séance. Now Samuel said to Saul, Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up from the grave? Saul answered, I am deeply distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God has departed from me and does not answer me any more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore, I have called you that you may reveal to me what I should do." Then Samuel said, "Why do you ask me, seeing the Lord has departed from you and has become your enemy? And the Lord has done for himself as he spoke by me, for the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor, David, because you did not obey the voice of the Lord nor execute his fierce wrath upon Amalek. Therefore, the Lord has done this thing to you this day. Moreover, the Lord will also deliver Israel with you into the hand of the Philistines. Tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also deliver the army of Israel into the hand of the Philistines." Immediately Saul fell full length on the ground, and was dreadfully afraid because of the words of Samuel, and there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no food all day or all night. The woman came to Saul and saw that he was severely troubled, and said to him, "Look, your maidservant has obeyed your voice, and I have put my life in my hands and heeded the words which you spoke to me. Now therefore, please, heed also the voice of your maidservant, and let me set a piece of bread before you, and eat that you may have strength when you go on your way." Nevertheless, Saul refused and said, "I will not eat." Therefore his servants, together with the woman, urged him, and he heeded their voice. Then he arose from the ground and sat on the bed. The woman had a fatted calf in the house, and she hastened to kill it. She took flour and kneaded it, and baked unleavened bread from it. Then she brought it before Saul and his servants, and they ate. Then they rose and went away that night. A seance in the early years. Modern history of spiritualism started in 1848, in a town called Hydesville, New York, where two sisters, Kate and Maggie Fox, lived. Not long after they moved into the house in Hydesville, the house began to make sounds. They began to personate these sounds as if they were persons. By knocking one, the sound would echo one, and knocking twice, the sound would echo twice. They perceived that they were receiving messages from the dead. Soon after the telegraph was invented, the Fox sisters believed that they could link this world with the spirit world through the invention of the telegraph. Truly enough, the spirits, not of the dead, but familiar spirits, began deceiving multitudes and believing communication with the dead is possible. Today, over 100,000 of believers in spiritualism believe that they can communicate with the dead. They also believe that there is no hell. But what does the Word of God say about the dead? For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Also, their love, their hatred, and their envy have now perished. Never more will they have a share in anything down under the sun. Ecclesiastes 9 verses 5 and 6. The dead know nothing. Therefore, we can perceive that what spiritualists say of the dead are no more than demons personating dead people or relatives called familiar spirits. Demons are deceiving spirits. Remember that demons do come as agents of light to deceive those who believe that the spirits of dead people continue to roam the earth after death. Believe me, these are familiar spirits personating a mother, father, husband, a wife, or child. Demons can transform into any dead person, because demons knew what the person looked like before they died, and they also know the most personal things that were about them. Today, mediums and psychics consult demons for those who come to them wanting to receive a message from their dead loved one. They have come into this knowledge through demonic spirits. The person believed the dead can communicate to them, and wanting to talk to their loved one, the mediums and psychics consult the dead person for them, only it is not the person that's dead they consult, but it is a deceiving spirit, or a familiar spirit that they receive a message. David rescues people of Ziklag. David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day that the Amalekites had invaded the south in Ziklag. The Amalekites had attacked Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but carried them away and went their way. David and his men came to the city, and there it was, burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices, and wept for them, until they had no more power to weep. David's two wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the widow of Nabal the Carmelite, had been taken captive. Now David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. However, David strengthened himself in the Lord his God, for he turned to the Lord God. 1 Samuel 30 verses 1-6. Then David said to Abiathar the priest Ahimelech his son, "Please bring the ephod here to me." Abiathar brought the ephod to David. Then David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Should I pursue this troop? Will I overtake them?" The Lord answered him, "Pursue, for you will surely overtake them and without fail recover all." Therefore, David and the 600 men who were with him went to Brook Besor. David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 stayed behind, who were so weary that they could not cross the brook Besor. Then they found an Egyptian in the field, and brought him to David, and they gave him bread, he ate, and they let him drink water. They gave him a piece of cake, of figs, and 2 clusters of raisins. So, when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had eaten neither bread nor drunken water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David said to him, "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" He said, "I am a young man from Egypt, servant of an Amalekite, and my master left me behind, because 3 days ago I fell sick. We made an invasion of the southern area of the Cherethites, in the territory which belongs to Judah, and of the southern area of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire." Then David said to him, "Can you take me down to this troop?" He said, "Swear to me by God that you will neither kill me nor deliver me into the hands of my master, and I will take you down to this troop." Therefore, when he had brought David down, there they were, spread out over all the land, eating, drinking, and dancing, because of all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. Then David attacked them from twilight until the evening of the next day. Not a man of them escaped, except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. David recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away, and David rescued his 2 wives. Nothing of theirs was lacking, either small or great, sons or daughters, spoil or anything, which they had taken from them. David recovered all. Then David took all the flocks and herds they had driven before those other livestock, and said, "This is David's spoil." 1 Samuel 30 verses 7-20. David came to the 200 men who had been so weary that they could not follow David, whom they also had made to stay at the brook Besor. So, they went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. When David came near the people, he greeted them. Then all the wicked and worthless men of those who went with David answered and said, "Because they did not go with us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we have recovered, except for every man's wife and children, that they may lead them away and depart." David said, "My brethren, you should not do so with what the Lord has given us, who has preserved us and delivered into our hand the troop that came against us. Who will heed you in this matter? But as his part is who goes down to the battle, so will his part be who stays by the supplies, that will share alike." It was from that day forward, David made it a statute and an ordinance for Israel to this day. Now when David came to Ziklag, he sent some of the spoil to the elders of Judah, to his friends, saying, "Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of the Lord, to those who were in Bethel, those who were in the cities of Ramoth of the south, in Jattir, in Aroer, in Sithmoth, in Eshtemoa, in Rachel, in the cities of the Jerahmeelites, in the cities of the Kenite, in Hormah, in Korashan, in Athak, in Hebron, and to all the places where David himself and his men were accustomed to rove." Saul and his sons dies in battle. The Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines, and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. Then the Philistines followed hard after Saul and his sons, and the Philistines killed Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, Saul's sons. The battle became fierce against Saul. The archers hit him, and he was severely wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword, and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised men come and thrust me through and abuse me." However, his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Therefore, Saul took a sword and fell on it. When his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he fell on his sword, and died with him. It was this same day that Saul, his 3 sons, his armor-bearer, and all his men died together. When the men of Israel, who were on the other side of the valley, and those who were on the other side of the Jordan, saw that the men of Israel had fled and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. So it happened the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped off his armor, and sent word throughout the land of the Philistines, to proclaim it in the temple of their idols and among the people. Then they put his armor in the temple of the Ashtoreths, their gods, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beth-shan, the temple of Dagon. 1 Samuel 31 verses 1 to 13, 1 Chronicles 10 verses 11 and 12. It was then that Saul died for his unfaithfulness, which he had committed against the Lord, because he did not keep the word of the Lord, and because he consulted a medium for guidance. He did not inquire of the Lord, therefore, the Lord killed him, and turned the kingdom over to David the son of Jesse. 1 Chronicles 10 verses 13 and 14. After the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David had stayed 2 days in Ziklag, on the 3rd day, behold, it happened that a man came from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head. So it was, when he came to David, that he fell to the ground and prostrated himself. David said to him, "Where have you come from?" He said to him, "I have escaped from the camp of Israel." Then David asked him, "How did the matter go? Please tell me." He answered, "The people have fled from the battle, many of the people are fallen and dead, and Saul and Jonathan his son are dead?" Then the young man who told him said, "As I happened by chance to be on Mount Gilboa, there was Saul, leaning on his spear, and indeed the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. Now when he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me, and I answered, 'Here I am.' Then he said to me, 'Who are you?' Then I answered him, 'I am an Amalekite.' He said to me again, 'Please stand over me and kill me, for anguish has come upon me, but my life still remains in me.' The Amalekite was lying. For we know that Saul spoke to his armor-bearer to kill him for the very reason that he did not want an Amalekite, an uncircumcised man, to come and thrust him in and abuse him. Therefore, Saul took a sword and fell on it. The man said, 'So I stood over him and killed him, because I was sure that he could not live after he had fallen, and I took the crown that was on his head and the bracelet that was on his arm, and have brought them here to my lord.' Therefore, David took hold of his own clothes and tore them, and so did all the men who were with him. They mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and for Jonathan his son, for the people of the Lord and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. Then David said to the young man who told him, 'Where are you from?' He answered, 'I am the son of an alien, an Amalekite.' So David said to him, 'How was it you were not afraid to put forth your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?' Then David called on of the young men and said, go near, and execute him. Therefore, he struck him so that he died. Then David said to him, Your blood is on your own head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. 2 Samuel 1 verses 1 to 16. Then David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son, and he told them to teach the children of Israel the song of the bow. Indeed, it is written in the book of Jasher. 2 Samuel 1 verses 17 and 18. David had just left from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and a young Amalekite later came to him with a report of the turnout of the battle of Israel and the Philistines, and in turn, he lied to David. He confessed to killing Saul, the Lord's anointed. The young Amalekite may have heard of the ongoing conflict between Saul and David and saw an opportunity to advance himself in the eyes of David by saying he killed his enemy. Why he lied about the matter, we can only speculate. It could have been to gain favor or recognition in the sight of David, or he may have sought an award. Whatever he sought, he received only death. The family of Saul. Jeiel and father of Gibeon, whose wife's name was Maacah, dwelt at Gibeon. His firstborn son was Abdon, then Zur, Kish, Baal, Nun, Nadab, Gedor, Ahio, Zechariah, and Mikloth. Mikloth's son was Shimei. They also dwelt alongside their relatives in Jerusalem, with their brethren. His son was Kish, and Kish's son was Saul. Saul's son was Jonathan, Malchishua, Abinadab, and Eshbal. The son of Jonathan was Merib-Baal, and Merib-Baal's son was Micah. The sons of Micah were Pidhan, Melech, Tariah, and Ahaz. Ahaz's son was Raja, and Jerah's sons were Almeth, Asmaveth, and Zimri's son was Moza. Moza's son was Bineah, Rephaiah his son, Elisah his son, and Azel his son. Azel had 6 sons whose names were these, Azrikam, Bacharu, Ishmael, Sheariah, Obadiah, and Hanan. These were the sons of Azel. 1 Chronicles 9 verses 35 to 44. Thank you for listening to Chapter 5 of the book The Kings of Israel from the book series It's All About Worship and To Whom You Worship by Doris N. Whaley Smith. The complete book in whole can be purchased on Amazon.com.